When I started at NIJ, I invented or thought I invented, I found out that a different discipline uses the same term called inclusive research. But in the context of criminal justice research, what I mean by inclusive research is research that takes the time to hear from the people who are the greatest experts or whatever the issue is that's under study. And a lot of people hear inclusive research and they think it's primarily including people with so-called lived experience. That's folks who may be victims of crime, um, may have experienced the criminal justice system in some way. And I certainly do mean to include them, but I think it's also important to value professional expertise as its own experience, right? And I've just been perplexed by how the field of criminology has evolved over time to increasingly elevate randomized controlled trials as the be all and end all. And to be fair, it is the most rigorous form of evaluation, but often at the expense of taking the time to also engage with people. And so the inclusive research mission was to do exactly that, and to encourage our grantees to do so, and to share more what that means in the process of conducting research. So, how does that all relate to leads? Well, it relates to leads because Leads is a great example of elevating that practitioner expertise. And who better to do that than people who are already housed in agencies? So they know best that perspective. And I think it's really important, and it can insert itself in any stage of the research process. We can be more intentional about the types of research questions we ask, the way we ask them. Developing surveys that really are informed by people who can tell you, we don't use that language. Or I know you want to get at this question, but this is not the right way to do that. And certainly when it comes to findings, bringing those findings back to the people who are closest to the issue can help better understand what those findings mean. I call it ground truthing the findings. I have had many experiences where had I not brought the findings back to the practitioners, I would have made an erroneous conclusion or not conducted additional analyses that would have shed new light on the problem. And perhaps most importantly of all, engaging the experts on the ground when it comes to asking the question, what are the implications of these findings for changes in policies and practices? And I got to tell you, I've reviewed many a journal article and research report written by highly credible researchers conducted with the most rigor possible. And by the time they get to that last section on implications for policy and practice, they don't know what to write. They're not taught this in school. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. But that's why you rely on the experts on the ground. What changes would you make based on these findings? Because if you can't answer that question, you're not really spurring change, are you? Another thing that I promoted as NIJ director is something that's been around since 1947, thanks to a fellow named Kurt Lewin, and it's called Action Research. But your audience might know it better as problem-oriented policing because it's a very similar model. It's a problem-solving process where you take the time to understand the underlying cause of the problem and you develop a solution. But the thing about action research is that you're sharing back information about whether the solution is being implemented as intended and what hiccups you're encountering along the way so that you can fix those in as close to real time as possible. That's very different from how most researchers were trained, myself included. We're trained to keep an arm's length from research, especially as an evaluator. We have to be objective, therefore, we can't share anything until the end. Well, that's a very horrible way to have a so-called partnership. We'd love to help you understand whether fill in the blank is working. We will come in and however many months, often years later, we will tell you whether it worked or not. Along the way, we might be collecting data on what is not working, but we're not going to share it with you because we're objective. Like that's nuts. So this is a long way of saying that I think success is having a true partnership where whoever is in this partnership is working in lockstep together. You can still have firewalls and ensure objectivity, but I think that that's successful, and that means that success could be seemingly little. In nature, it could be, oh, we realized that we thought we were recruiting the right people, but we weren't because we were reaching the wrong target audiences through our marketing strategies. Did that increase the number of recruits you got? Maybe not, but it's those incremental changes that are made with the value of data-driven processes that I think we should be counting as success.